Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two outstanding poets with us today, Terence Winch and Kit Robinson. Terence will read first, and then Kit. Bronx-born son of Irish immigrants, writer and musician Terence Patrick Winch has published 10 books of poems, the most recent being It Is As If Desire, Hanging Loose 2024, and That Ship Has Sailed, Hit Poetry Series 2023. Winner of an American Book Award and the Columbia Book Award, he has also published 2 story collections and a novel. Co-founder of the original Celtic Thunder, the traditional Irish music group, he composed the band's best-known song, When New York Was Irish. Winch's work, for which he had received an NEA Poetry Fellowship and a Gertrude Stein Award for Innovative Writing, appears in more than 50 anthologies and has been featured on NPR's All Things Considered and the Writer's Almanac. Here's a brilliant poet, Terence Winch.
Thanks, Harry. Thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure and honor to be here and to read with Kit Robinson, whom I admire a lot. And I want to thank Ed Friedman, I think, who recommended both of us to you for this. So what I'm going to do is read a little cluster of poems from the book you mentioned, That Ship Has Sailed, which came out last year from the Pitt Poetry Series. And then we'll have a little recorded interlude of something that I'll introduce then, and then I'll read another few poems from the more recent book, Still, that came out a month or two ago. So I'll start off with the title poem from this book called That Ship Has Sailed. In our old life, we ate ice cream and bread pudding. We drank glass after glass of Grand Marnier until it made us sick. Our libido was as big as a billboard. Our libido was larger than a drive-in theater screen in the middle of nowhere, playing endless adolescent pornographic classics. We had an appetite for appetite. We poured melted lard all over our popcorn, which we then covered with a snowstorm of salt. We smoked, we snorted, we cavorted with people who were best left alone. We talked all fucking night on the phone. We read Keats and Yeats and all the greats day and night. We got into fights in pubs. We drank 16 cups of coffee every day. We called in sick and spent the day in mysteries, doubts, uncertainties. We shirked our responsibilities without a second thought. We ate Chinese food and pizza for breakfast. We rode the bus to visit friends wherever they might be. We stole books. We cheated. We lied. We cried. We danced all night in the living room under the Christmas tree. In our new life, we try to remember the names of the people we think we might have slept with. We haul the bags of frozen broccoli out of the freezer. We light a candle to commemorate crossing the great divide between the green island of the young and the songs in our bones that have come unsung. Fallen world. You never cry anymore. The trees don't make you weep. The baseball season has almost gone missing, but you really aren't concerned. You can't go anywhere. There's a world of free love, grocery stores, off-track betting shops, and farmers markets. But that world has slipped into another dimension. Like when you hang a jacket you got as a kid in your closet and it turns into an old man's 3-piece suit a half-century later. I'm an absentee voter. I'm an absentee drunk. I assault my senses on a daily basis, but nothing can open up the sky again for me and you. No one can tell us we are free to go. We get carry out. We get lonely and scared. No one can open up the past and let it flow right into the present the way it's always done before. Instead, it's stuck back there in the good old days. I blow a kiss to the priests and rabbis. I genuflect to the babies and bathing beauties. We will see you soon, I hope, when the trees remember the names of every fallen leaf. This poem is kind of an ekphrastic poem. Those are poems that are usually written about or in response to a visual work. The visual work in this case being a photograph of me at around 3 years old in my neighborhood in the Bronx, with holding a ball with my leg bleeding. It's actually a memory I still have. It's called "You May Take One Giant Step." They told me as the blood ran down my leg how cute I looked in my short pants holding a ball. That was back in the old world, in another century, back when we buried the dead in coffee cans. The sun was silver lemon then, not egg yolk yellow, the way it is now. It would burn you so red your mother could melt butter on your skin. You never learned to throw that ball. You clutched it in your hand and hoped it would never roll away. You were given ginger ale and toast to cut the fever. The mothers all stood on the sidewalk, blowing smoke as the breeze made their skirts quiver. Time was more like background music than an instrument of destruction, ticking in bubble wrap and waiting to go off at any second. Everything rhymed in those days. There was a song for vacuuming and an opera for the story of the street. When the moment came to dry your tears and go back inside, the curtain fluttered out the window like a flag of surrender. I've written a whole number of poems over the years that in some way respond to the JFK assassination. And this is one of them, called JFK Assassinated. I had just started freshman year in college when he was murdered. I'm on my way to the car, part of the carpool, going to school, and everybody else is standing in front of the open doors of their cars, bent over, their heads resting on their arms, listening to news of the assassination. I think we cried. We went to school and prayed and cried. It snowed in April that year. That year, no one had yet committed any sex crimes. No one was a junkie. Only a few of us had already died. This was when men beat their wives and children, when men spent their days digging ditches, drinking quart bottles of Miller High Life, which was cold and golden. You could wear hats back then. You could go out very late at night and walk the streets smoking cigarettes, looking for love. You could stay until the bars closed. You could sit on the stoop, blowing smoke into the sky, wondering what would happen, in the future, which was like a far-off country you would never get to visit, but whose laws you were forced to obey. And I'll read one final one from this book called The Open Door, a poem written for my Irish teacher, Irish language teacher, Jennifer O'Riordan. But I'm going to send it out to my sister Eileen, who requested it. One day, the trees will raise their arms up as you walk by, but that will just be me saying hello. If you hear music in the blue Aegean water urging itself toward the shore, that's a tune I'm working on for you, called Andors of Skalcha, or The Open Door. Those stones on the beach, I put them there for you to find a way to keep me in mind. I will listen for you with a shell to my ear, hoping to hear you sing a song about loss, love, memory, forgetting, or maybe one about a fox, a duck, or a red rabbit. You're one habit I never want to quit. I'll be by that door, waiting for your visit. So now we're just going to take a little recorded break and play a track from an album that I should have had one here to show you, an album that came out last year. It's a recording of live concert tracks from concerts over the years by Celtic Thunder, during which I would often do like a little tiny mini reading. So this is a kind of poem story with a little music mixed in called Dead Stop. And it features a friend of mine named Dominic Murray singing and my brother Jesse on guitar. We played a fundraiser twice a year in the Teamsters Hall on Capitol Hill for about 10 years for a powerful congressman from Queens. His parents were from Mayo, as I recall. He had a perfect head of thick brown hair that stayed young
even as the face underneath it grew older. Beautifully groomed, dressed in an expensive designer suit, he would accept envelopes from a procession of benefactors. We were really only background noise at these kinds of events. They paid us well, fed us delicious food, and demanded very little. In fact, most of the time, we would just sit there while people made little speeches in praise of the congressman. That's the kind of easy gig musicians love, just sitting around eating and drinking, after which someone pays you a wad of cash. None of us ever really spoke to the congressman, who seemed pleasant enough, but aloof, distant. I don't ever remember him making a speech. He just gloried in the adulation of his cronies and supplicants. Thus, year after year, all these gatherings blended into one, so similar were they all to each other. Until this one particular year, when the unexpected happened. We were cruising easily through the gig, never breaking a sweat, occasionally playing a tune or two, all as per usual. But then, in a dramatic departure from the script, the congressman's chief of staff came up to us and said, "The congressman would like to sing a song." We were amazed. The congressman, who had never spoken, never even made a few passing remarks, whose voice we had never heard utter a word, wants to sing? Oh, this was such wonderful, exhilarating news. The routine, the predictable, the ordinary were about to be discarded in favor of who knew what. I didn't know the congressman sang, I said to the chief of staff. 10 years, twice a year, and he's never so much as proposed a toast, and now he wants to sing. Yeah, he likes to sing every once in a while, the chief of staff said. Do you know what he wants to do? I asked. No, he'll work that out with you guys. We couldn't wait. A minute or so later, he appeared before us, all smiley and friendly, though we had the impression he was noticing us for the very first time. Congressman, we didn't know you sang. Oh, yes, I love to sing. Well, do you know what key you usually sing in? He shrugged and smiled patiently at us, suggesting that this was a truly ridiculous question. My brother Jesse is always adept at quickly locating the key of guest performers, so I wasn't worried. What's the song you want to do, we asked. He looked at us as though the answer to that question was clearly self-evident. Danny Boy, he said, and we knew this would be really good. He hummed a little, Jesse found a key and strummed a chord, and the congressman launched into this great classic of Irish schmaltz. Oh, Danny Boy, he sang as we started to follow along, but that was it, just Oh, Danny Boy. He looked to us a bit panicky to supply the next line. The pipes are calling, I whispered, and he quickly returned to the mic and belted out, the pipes are calling. And then stopped dead again. From glen to glen and down the mountainside, I prompted, and he echoed into the mic. From glen to glen and down the mountainside. It was as if we were winding him up phrase by phrase. I can't even remember if we came up with enough of the words of the song to get through a passable version, to the part where the mother in her grave requests an Ave from her son, and listeners everywhere begin to weep.
Okay. So that was a little recorded interlude. And so I'll close out with a few poems from this book, which just came out in June from Hanging Loose Press, called It Is As If Desire. These are all short poems, all 10 lines each, and they're all occasional poems, meaning they were written for various occasions. Most of them were written to Susan Campbell, my beloved spouse, and to whom the book is dedicated. So I will read just maybe 3 or 4 of these. As I say, they're pretty short. Thus it is told. I know what to do when the kettle boils over. I fill it again. Your day is here. It is yours alone. I implore the rain god to assist you in your work. I offer supplications to the spirit of the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathroom. O spirit, Allow her dreams to rise up into the clear day. Make all that is absent be all that is present. Free all that you have placed within her being, and let it rise like smoke over the blue mountain. Let suffering fly off like a hawk in the whirlwind. Cabbage and jam. Between word and meaning, the land rolls down beyond the hidden arbor, where the clothesline waits in secret, where the cousins line up for the quiz show and lotto, where I sit by the phone and computer, expecting any minute to hear from you, somewhere off the grid, maybe sick, maybe blue. How should I know? I just need for you to call me, baby. Is that so hard to do? This is called LX, which of course is 60, written for his 60th birthday. Let the message go out into the supermarkets, emergency rooms, produce stands. Tell the dentist, the governor, the handyman. Pot roast will be cooked. London broil shall be consumed. Cake will be lit and eaten. Meanwhile, money keeps piling up around us. We play our instruments on magic carpets. We like the kind of time that you wind up and set free, the minutes released from captivity, all to celebrate your most awesome nativity. This is called Forecast. Far away, I hear the music play for us, the dancing in the dining room, breakfast in the beautiful beyond, the cars honking out our praises like saxophones, the sky clearing and puffing itself up, the extinct birds suddenly reappearing, and all this just for us. I got us a discount on our car insurance policy. I paid all the bills on time. They say tomorrow will be fair and fine. And I'll read one more called Special Report. I am looking at the stones and rocks. We're surrounded by them. Prehistoric, ancestral souls making circles around us, protecting us from bad medicine, bad omens, keeping us away from midnight emptiness. We wash our hands over and over. We wear our masks, hoping there really is an off switch in our brains, now working overtime to sort out the here from the hereafter.
Thank you, Terence. Did you want to play your other one, the childhood ground, or do you just want to talk for a little while?
Well, it depends. I don't want to cut into Kit's time or go overboard. I mean, it's kind of up to you. I'm not sure where we are in terms
of plenty of time. We have 10 minutes left. So
we do. Okay. Well, then let's play that. This is a video from an album I did in 2017 called This Day Too, and the from my point of view, the key song on the album is one called Childhood Ground, which is there was a long piece in the New Yorker a week or two ago by Ian Fraser on the Bronx, and it was really interesting to me because he talked about the Cross Bronx Expressway and the horrible impact that had on the Bronx back in the long period of its construction. And I think this song of mine is the only song, in existence about the, more or less about the building of the Cross Bronx Expressway. So we did a video of it after the album came out. And the young woman who sings it, Eileen Esty, is one of my favorite singers, does a great job. And my son Michael is playing the fiddle on the song. So you'll see a lot of photographs, about half of which are from my family's photograph collection. And about half of them are images I got online of the Bronx. So Childhood Ground.
at night and played, and no one was afraid. 'Cause our souls were saved, our faces shaved. We were young back then and very brave. We thought our world would never change back in 1959. But they tore down half the block one year, took half of all our near and dear. So the Cross Bronx had a place to run right through our neighborhood. Now the junkies wander aimlessly from the bus stop to the train. And even when the sun is out, down here it looks like rain. See the mayor, he lived way downtown. The governor way upstate. And they didn't care, they were unaware of the way they sealed our fate. Because we used to live right over there till they tore the whole block down. Left a little rubble strewn on our sacred childhood ground. Place. You can spot them in a passing face. You can hear the tunes echo off the ruins of the buildings on our block. Now the bare-ruined choirs haunt the street where late the sweet birds sing. And even when the sun is out, down here it looks like rain. Now the junkies wander aimlessly from the bus stop to the train. And even when the sun is out, down here it looks like rain.
You know, you really are a singer in your soul, and you know, everything just glows with your work, you know, and it's just such a pleasure. You just really have touched me deeply. And, you know, I go back and read Horace often, and he would do what you did, find the extraordinary in the ordinary. And, you know, obviously you touch on things that are important, JFK's assassination, the Cross Bronx Expressway displacing people, among many other things. And you really blessed our show. So thank you. I'm so happy to have met you on this show. And Michael Lally used to talk about how great you were, and I totally agree. A couple of questions. When did you write your first poem?
Well, first of all, Harry, thank you so much for those very kind words. I appreciate it. When did I write my first poem? I'm not totally sure. I remember when I first started college, when I was 17, I wrote a poem that was kind of a reference to the Vietnam War, that I have somewhere. It exists still. And that was the first, and that they published it in the college magazine. And I thought, I've written a poem and someone's published it. And, so I was around 17 or 18. I might have been writing poems in high school, but I don't remember. It's possible. I'm not sure.
What is it that attracts you about the poetry form?
Oh, well, I like writing all different kinds of writing, but I do think of myself primarily as a poet. And, you can do more and more interesting things with language as a poet, I think, than you can in any other language form. I say that knowing that James Joyce and Gertrude Stein and other people have done some pretty interesting things in language and that are in poems. But, I love it. I write mostly free verse, but I love form. I love rhyme. I've written lots of villanelles and sestinas and sonnets and that kind of thing. So, we have to do something with ourselves while we're on the planet, right? Writing poems seems like a fairly good option.
You just make it look so easy, and it just glows. So, you've really been a blessing to us. So I want to thank you very much. You're in Washington, D.C., I think, right?
Yeah, I'm right over the district line these days. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Terence. What a great...
Thanks so much. Thanks, Harry. I appreciate it.
Our next poet is Kit Robinson. So, Kit, why don't you come on the show? Kit Robinson is a Bay Area poet, writer, and musician. He was born in Evanston, Illinois in 1949, graduated from Walnut Hills High School in Cincinnati, and earned a BA in Yale University. He is the author of 24 collections of poetry, including Guaratina, Lavender Ink 2022, excuse my pronunciation, Thought Balloon, Roof 2019, Leaves of Class, Checks 2017, Marine Layer, Blaze Box 2015, and the Messianic Trees Selected Poems 1976-2003, Adventures in Poetry 2009. His published collaborations include Individuals with Lynn Hygienium, Cloud 8 with Alan Bernheimer, and A Mammal of Style with Ted Greenwald. Recent poems appear in Brooklyn Rail, Threefold, Traffic Report, the Cafe Review R&R, and the Best American Poetry Pick of the Week. Here's a marvelous poet, Kit Robinson.
Thank you, Harry. And thanks to you, Terence. That was a wonderful reading. I've been a fan of Terence's work for a very long time, and I really admire it and enjoy it whenever I see it or whenever I hear it. I read that article by Ian Fraser in the New Yorker too. That was really terrific. And my wife Ani has been reading The Power Broker about Robert Moses. But I didn't know that you lived through the construction of the Cross Bronx Expressway. That's something new to me. I'm going to read a few poems by some of the books that Harry mentioned. This one was selected by Terence as the poem of the week, and it's called This Poem. This poem is incredible. You should immediately memorize it and tell it to all your friends. If you read this poem over and over, you will be better able to read and understand other poems, any poem. Life goes on and off. Death goes off and on. Shit happens. Just like in this poem, which is like an elixir or vaccine. Sometimes this poem is like overhearing a conversation in the next yard, a moment of relaxation in your otherwise busy day. Other times it's more like thinking about something, then thinking about something else. It never stops, even when interrupted by a passing train. In that sense, this poem is immortal, insofar as it is always on the move, to no particular end. When you dream a poem, the poem is often odd, weird, asyntactic, or wild. This poem is totally normal. It teaches one how to live normally under the most abnormal of conditions. Put one foot in front of the other is how the ancestors put it. They even put it into this poem so that anyone would be able to see what this poem of our life on earth is made of. The wish. I wish I were a scientist, diligently gathering data, conducting many experiments, employing precise controls and consistent methodologies over the course of time, faithful to a concerted empiricism, not knowing what will happen, maybe nothing, but hopeful for that one big breakthrough, instead of what I am, a poet, bending logic, breaking syntax, not making sense, trying to say it all in one compressed blurtation and ending in dubious shards of speech for imaginary scholars to piece together later. Now, this one is called The Lit. The words take us only so far, only insofar as we are prepared to go outward and with a tug of the line. We do so, stepping lightly onto the fruited plain. The light wakes us, being the sun, or keeps us up, electrically wired into the power grid. Words are our intimate legacy. Light, the mysterious other, revealing difference we struggle to remake in our image, throwing over it our dark cloak of words, until sitting in silence, we bask and factor the spread. Open lanes, widen the gulf, stars go off course, the wind blasts the doors off the houses, spells words for blocks, down long streets forming sentences. Districts are paragraphs, cities two-dimensional texts. Read from above, they look like silver maps. We don't have time to read them. The water slams against the rocks. A face appears in the trees. The moon, something we heard said once. The words carry us. We are made of water. The tongue is a boat in our head. In my guise. In my guise as a business person, as a musician, a poet, in my guise as a son, a husband, a poppy, my guise as a man, I glide in my guise, and the stars wheel in the sky. Have you noticed the days are getting shorter? Not really, it still stays light pretty late. Summer is an expanding form in my guise as a watcher of days. The landscapers have arrived in my guise as a homeowner. In Spanish, they speak of the task at hand. The sound of the mower enters my poem. Communicating vessels pour information back and forth across the universe of forms. I go back over the story again and again in my guise as a dreamer, one who imagines the world as it appears, slightly modified each time, wholly different, suddenly transformed, throwing light off in waves. The poem is a place to be for a little while. I enter in my guise as a reader. The words light up as my eyes pass over them. Each is a token of my affliction. I must be hung up on expression, the way a certain person sees and says what is going on for them. Fascinated I am in my guise as a riverboat captain, surveying the banks in search of native life, the way things are now, were then, the highlights of a conversation, opening paths into the future. I remain in place as in my guise as a seated figure. Time runs through my fingers. Nothing is very convenient right now, yet my health is good enough. in my guise as a normal animal. At noon, I will take my leave. The sounds of transportation penetrate the open pores of the membrane of possible answers. What was the question? A theme of instances flows against the shores of time. Open the black box of personality. Remove all the parts. I can see where all this is going, in my guise as a trenchant observer, a blue jacket, a bemused attitude, a pair of legs, in my guise as none of the above. That things will not only be different, but also more so. That unexpected eventualities will interrupt the proceedings. That messages will get mixed. That tremendous joy and love will be declared and concretely validated. That new meetings will give off authentic sparks. And even at night, alone in the dark, the wheel of life will continue to turn, making the way more difficult, more interesting, more fully charged. So that whatever I say, in my guise as a village explainer, the drift of my words will be constantly exceeded by the manifold streamings of minutely colored cells. Earth Sense for Rachel Carson and Agnes Martin. Inspiration grows out of the earth, a garden of earthly delights, always just around the corner, on your way to the store. Change jingles in your pocket. Life rides along in your bag. What's most worthy of analysis is what falls out of them, your inadvertent asides, tentative, tenuous, subtle, supple, under the breath. This command and control environment is made for TV, not for you and me. We are otherwise, non-compliant with the panicky strictures of inflated dominance to the toxic fantasies of prize assholes trailing fake news ties. We prefer the continuous borderless microtonal transnational flow, otherwise known as reality. As in, keep it real, Holmes. Remember, this is our joint hood. Let's save all beings, okay? This land is made for sensitive beings of every color and stripe, not just a small club of fascist thugs and their billionaire keepers. I mean, really, come on. But where was I? The sun still shines on the local garden. It bounces off the pavement and puts a spring in your step. There are people to see, sounds to identify, thoughts to entertain. There is dinner to cook, to shop for and cook, kids and grown-ups to check in on. Let me know when you have a minute. Imperfection is everywhere. All your efforts fall short. Disappointment, frustration reign. Our idea of it is unattainable, yet altogether it is perfectly all right when seen in a certain light, the light of a distant campfire, sulfur light, diagonal light, opal light, and old light, and marsh light, and moonlight. Thanks, inspirational friendship, for lighting the way. The sea around us is an inspiration any child can understand, a physical delight, energy stored in battery harmony, open for all to hear. Alternate pages turn quickly when no one is looking. If you are shocked, you must have been asleep. Something can be reality or TV, never both. Mistakes are the saint's way of messing with us. If only we could see the future, but we have our backs to it. Turn around, look out, and live. That is the message in the bottle. Way off on the horizon, a distant plume of smoke. The eye sees what the mind cannot grasp. Turning over in space, we are alive to the half of it. Let's order in and go through the game plan once again. It's going to be a long, hard slog. We better get started. There isn't much time. The mind is a collective breathing. Our direction has never been more clear. Now I'd like to read some new work that's in manuscript. I'm just going to read it off my screen here. This is a poem called Neolithic. Whether to send tanks or push for a ceasefire, this was the bone of contention in the Ginsburg home pre-World War II. Communist Naomi called for intervention. Socialist Louis argued restraint. Young Alan favored war on fascism, later vowing to save all beings, chanting Om in the face of tear gas as demonstrators streamed through the gates. Colossal sculpted heads carved from tons of basalt represent Olmec leaders wearing leather helmets of ball players, an inscribed staircase built at Yaxchilan to honor Bird Jaguar the Great, who kicks a rubber ball containing the body of his rival, Jeweled Skull, the central feature of a carved lintel on a nearby temple. Wars are contests of injury. Anyone killed or disfigured remains so, even if largely theatrical, like Homeric-style warfare, where heroes taunted, jeered, and occasionally threw javelins or shot arrows at one another. Sovereignty, bureaucracy, and politics, types of domination grounded respectively in the use of violence, knowledge, and charisma, form the three-legged stool of the state. Politicians on both sides have hoodwinked their people. Now all must suffer. How many people can this world hold? A woman holding a child, a man holding another man in contempt, a child climbing over a pile of rubble, regional conflict, rumors of war, pulse of big city vibration. Who wreaked havoc on the hospital? They both did. Impossible to assign blame in the fog of war. All my ancient car mechanics couldn't put the van back on the road. Tone rows fill out the sensorium to the beat of the timing chain. Diplomacy must play catch-up to grim truth in the absence of time. Back to where history begins. News of warring tribes, overlapping demographics, conflicting reports, the wave of the future, mixed blood harmonics, up the neck of the bass, all beings safe, all beings free. So lately, I've been working on a series of poems that relate to music. And my method here is that I put the music on the player and write. And so for each of these poems, I'm listening to a different recording, and the title of the poem becomes the name of the song or the name of the album that I'm listening to. And then I attribute the music to its composer or performer. And I'm just going to read a few of these. The London Collection, after Monk. Don't forget to tinkle before you get in the car to go home. Words to the man who once was a boy. Then there he goes, the man I love, spreading the word, 5 fingers on each of his hands. Maybe you remember him coming in late, wearing his heart on something blue, according to you. Introspection is not his strong suit. He'd rather be out on the breezeway, picking up speed. Perfectly balanced on 2 big feet, wide awake when half asleep, damn happy to be sad. What do you say to someone with eyes in the back of their head? How's the weather back there? Did you jig when you should have jagged? Where's the beat? Are you still open? Haven't I seen you someplace before? This crepuscule is unlike any other. Out the window, out on the street, weather going away. Where did you get that nutty idea? The notes spill out of the chord and onto the driveway. We discover nothing, lest we explore. Be that as it may, it's good to be back in Hackensack. This one is Beautiful Telephones, after Carla Bley. I think to write freely, like Spinoza, but not in Latin. Rather, a desiccated English is my preferred medium. Bits of history cling to the underside of speech, a ray of hope in a glass tube. Military precision subjects the body to fits of rage. Hilarious birds flock to the marine band. A world of madcap humor lasts a definite while. A copycat like me enters a room after you. What happens is entirely dependent on what does not. Multiple outcomes get in each other's way. We hang out on the sidelines and follow the action on the lawns. The sun lights up the afternoon. These memories are marvelous, even if patently false. Their particulars are pure invention, composed as they are of disparate strands of multicolored fabric of delight, whose imaginary future welcomes a continuing past. A couple of these poems are not written about or to music, but rather dedicated to two good friends of mine who also happen to be great poets, Lynn Haginian and Neely Tchaikovsky. Both of them died this year. This one is called Obad, after Lynn. I am concise. The world is prolix, comprising as it does the 7 C's, a gram of cocaine, Jiminy Cricket, transcendentalism, the horse you rode in on, flapjacks, pieces of 8, titanium rods, ambergris, Alicia Keys, color field abstraction, a straight flush, appendicitis, Monte Alban, sugar smack, Santa Anita, cumulus clouds, road maps, Don Quixote, a pair of pliers, flight simulators, Tenochtitlan, Grauman's Chinese Theater, the Plymouth Hoe, California poppies, and trigonometry, in no particular order. Now let us inspect these apparitions in the light of day. But first, the morning pills and morning news. Some tears well up as posts from friends of Lynn are read. But first, a cup of coffee and a chat with Ani. Full moon last night has been replaced by plucky sun. Ready for anything, to toast it with big love. Rivers of irritation undermine the arrangements. Condolences come pouring in. A swirl of bedclothes in the corner, a prelude to making the bed. And this one is called Stellar Jays, after Neely. I have my second cup of coffee by the handle, one of many paths to enlightenment, according to Hebraic bodhisattvas at the Greyhound station in San Bernardino in the 50s. On Red Mountain at the summit, a dusting of snow, campfire smoke, my solitary inspiration when all else is set aside to make room for an archive. How many nights and days are going to pass us by? Dreams of Bob Kaufman at the Trieste. Plenty of time for another cup, or cross the street to City Lights, House of Ferlinghetti. You packed it all in to your poems, with breathing space, bad eyesight, love of the greats, infirmity, enthusiasm, style, wild, hairy brainchild moves. You skipped, interiorly bound, until discovering the perfect cave for living and dying. Plato was here, and Wim Wenders' smile. Sleeping off a film script in the dawn light, all rolled up in a ball of light, one dimly espied from across the yard, where stellar jays make hay. I don't know how to tell you this, as you are gone from sight, but not from hearing, the thrum of the voice, awake in the head. You don't know what love is, after Billie Holiday. Unless you learn the context, Mondrian's Broadway Boogie Woogie, a grid work of red, yellow, blue, black, and white that amounts to a city crowded with solitude, the feeling of the blues. How lips taste is the juice of speculation. I guess you flipped your heart and lost, without a single thought of reminiscing, that lost their taste for kissing. Red square, black square of Malevich, the very measure of space. White, a wall of ambient sound. To the left, people. To the right, none. Nothing compares to you. The taste of tears is salty. The feel of sleepless eyes is nowhere. A trumpet solo is all you know of what love is. Song for My Father, after Horace Silver. Not all people have fathers. There are lots of different ways to make a baby, many different ways to grow up, different people who can make a family. My dad was always there for me. In his boyhood on the farm, the whole family slept on a porch, mother, father, and 3 sons, a one-room schoolhouse, a love of reading, the Depression, the move to Tennessee, the university, the trombone, Harvard, World War II, England, my mom, Evanston, me. With my parents at the Shattuck Hotel standing in line for registration, Horace Silver is just in front of us. Unabashed, I welcome Horace to the Bay Area, knowing that he's playing at Yoshi's on Claremont. He is cordial and polite. I introduce him to my father. Later, when Dad is in hospital, I bring a cassette of Horace's trio sides. The music brings us comfort. My father drove me to high school every morning on his way to the University of Cincinnati, where he taught English Lit. At a state park in Indiana, he kept me and Nick in stitches with his improvisational wit. As a kid on the beach at Northwestern, I loved to swim between his legs and climb up on his back. He was always there, and he still is. And this last one is Chimurenga Rebel, after Thomas Mapfumo, the great Zimbabwean singer-musician. Everything that happens millions of times, as your time and my time are entirely different, yet one and the same. The line curves with the earth, a coat of many colors clinging to a rock hurtling through space. The straight line, too, is circular. The return of the chorus anchors us in this space, a groove at one with time, where we can be together in the river's flow. Carried along by the current battle for liberation that is our life on earth is framed in the small actions of the everyday. A phone call from the beyond, a dream of a tall stranger, walking alone in a town, seashells on a coastal road, distant music. Let the dancers have the floor. They know how to use it. The sky is a tent, a big tent of clouds to shade the dancers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Kit. What a range you have, from those early poems, experimental, playful, surprising. They just wake up our senses, our mind. And then, toward the end, the second to last poem you read, based on Horace's song for my father, was so touching, your love for your father, and, just radiant. You're just incredible. You take us out of the personal anguish that we feel at times, just lifts us up into the words, and you're all embracing at the same time. You're entertaining, and, just thank you very much. You're a fabulous poet. So could you tell me when you wrote your first poem?
I prepared my answer when you asked Terence that. I can tell you my first sentence that I wrote when I was in first grade. Kit has a new Cubs cap. I think that was my first poem.
How old were you?
First grade, what is that? 7?
10?
Maybe. I was just learning to write.
What is it about poetry that attracts you to its form?
Well, I think I was attracted to poetry initially. I would say maybe through music. I discovered Bob Dylan in about 1963, and I became a huge fan and listener of his work. And of course, he wrote poems on the backs of his albums. So I think that was a great inspiration. It's become a way of life for me because I was able to meet other poets, learn from them, correspond with them, join a community of writers. So I think that the social aspect of poetry is one of the big things. But then, of course, it's a solitary pursuit. And, I have an introspective side as well. And I just enjoy having the freedom to allow bits of language that occur to me, it's things that I'm thinking or things that I've heard, to recombine them in various ways and make something.
Well, you make us see the world in new ways. We have a couple minutes left. Why don't you each just take 1 minute each, starting with you, Kit, since you've just finished, and say something about Terence's work. And then, Terence, why don't you take 1 minute and say a little bit about Kit's work?
Okay. Terence's work combines a number of different skills and qualities that I admire. One is his wit. His poems are very funny. And there's not too many poets who can do that. So that's a quality that I really prize. And then he writes about personal history in a way that's more broadly embracing social history, whether it's has to do with the Irish American community in which he grew up, or his own personal history. So I like the personal aspect of his work. He does it in a way that is very clean and very clear. It can be sentimental, but it's never morbid. It's always it always glistens with a kind of refreshing awareness of the passage of time.
Terence, we have 1 minute.
Well, thanks so much, Kit. That was very generous of you. And the same back to you. Your work, I was thinking as you were reading, I put on the headphones because I wasn't getting enough volume from my laptop speakers. And when I put the headphones on, it really kind of changed everything. And I just kind of closed my eyes and listened to you read. And you read beautifully. I mean, you really have a wonderful reading voice, I think. And I started really getting into the rhythm of the poems. I mean, you and I were both good friends of Ted Greenwald's. And of course, his work had that incredible energy to it, that repetition and that use of ordinary language. I mean, Ted was so hard to classify and categorize, but I was hearing, and you guys collaborated on stuff, and your work interconnected more than mine and his did, and I could hear that as you were reading, and just the long list poem to Lynn Haginian was funny and ridiculous and wonderful, and the poem to your father was just very, very touching. It was like a whole movie script in one poem, and I loved it. I also had a father who was wonderful and terrific, and I remember being in the ocean with him in Rockaway in Queens, and and that whole feeling of your father as a protective figure and a loving one is, your poem just knocked that out of the park. So, yeah, a pleasure here. I don't think I've heard you read before, so that was great.
Same here. We've never, not only have we not read together, but we haven't even heard each other read.
Right, exactly. Oh, and of course the leadoff poem, the one that I ran on as pick of the week. That's just a favorite of mine. Wonderful poem, very funny.
Well, you two have just been extraordinary readers, and your content is just fabulous. You really lifted me up. Sometimes you wake up and you're a little tired and this and that, and how can I get through the day? And then I come on this show, and you two it's exalting. And this hour is always sacred to me, and I know it is to you two, poetry. So it's really a blessing to have you both on the show. It's the first time we've met, and even though I've heard about you and seen your poetry, it just really, beyond my words to even tell you how deeply touched I am and grateful that I am for you both. So thank you again, Terence Winch and Kit Robinson. And next Tuesday, we have two wonderful writers with us, Kim Noriega and Kimberly Lyons will be with us. So thank you all very much. And now here's Allegra to go on to the next show. And television waits for no man or no woman. There's a new show coming up at 2. And so thank you once again, Kit Robinson and Terence Winch.
Thank you, Harry.